And
Is
I
social
will-
media up and running? Not that we have any cases, but it'd be nice to.
Right.
I'm clicking start as we speak.
Thank you.
Yeah, Facebook is working. YouTube is also on. So we are ready, sir.
Very good.
Okay.
Steve, you want to, I think the motions show me, but if you want to call it to order, however you want
Sure.
to do it, sir.
I was kind of curious about that. I think you're usually the first meeting of the year because we have officers, but usually it's the president.
Go right ahead, sir.
Okay, I call the April 28th, 2021 Area Board of Zoning Appeals public hearing meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the roll call, please, Eric.
All right. Steve Clevenger,
Present.
Gary Schroeder,
Present.
Michelle Dennis. Michelle Dennis. Ed Butts.
Present.
Tom Andrew.
Present.
Frank Donaldson.
Present.
Jen Decker. Jen Decker. And if I may remind people to mute if they are not speaking, and I will mute myself now.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
I move to approve the minutes from the March 24th, 2021 BZA public hearing meeting as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. New business, Ryan.
Okay, well, we do have continuances here. BZA 2052 is being continued to June. At petitioner's request, that's their first continuance, and then BZA 2053 is being continued to next month due to a publishing situation. So, and then we do have some administrative matters to discuss after those continuances are taken.
Thank you, Ryan. And I'll take the motions for the continuances, please.
I move to continue BZA 2053 Casey Giles to the May 26th, 2021 BZA meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. And the next continuance?
I move to continue BZA 2052 Fox Acquisitions LLC to the June 23rd, 2021 BZA meeting.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. If there's anyone on social media, both cases have been continued. BZA 2053 Casey Giles and BZA 2052 Fox Acquisitions LLC have both been continued. Casey Giles to the May 26th meeting and Fox Acquisitions to the June 23rd meeting.
We currently have no public comment on social media.
Okay. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is administrative matters. Ryan?
Okay. We'll either let Rabita or David take it from here, but basically the Area Plan Commission, full commission, has decided to resume in-person meetings, starting with sort of a test case for the executive committee meeting coming up next week. And so as the BZA controls its own business, we wanted to broach the subject with you. Eric had offered that the state legislature is currently, I think, still debating potential new legislation to govern returning to public hearings in person. Perhaps he could give a status of that, if that's still active or if that's died. But presently, I believe we're still operating under the governor's emergency order. And so we sort of have the ability to decide, well, the president of the BZA and the commission members here had the ability to decide, the board members to decide whether they would like to be all virtual or to return to in-person meetings. So I guess let me see if Eric can give an update on, is there anything the state legislature has done that will make our decision for us?
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, I would be happy to do so. The electronic meeting policy has passed. I don't know that the governor signed it, but he's anticipated to sign it. When the governor signs it, it will be effective upon his signature. But backing up, as Ryan indicated, the governor's order, the emergency order, still controls. And really what that means is that we have a wide range of things that we can do. We can meet completely virtually, as we're doing, as long as that governor's executive order is still in effect. Even though the legislature's passed some legislation, we still have the governor's order superseding, allowing us to meet as we are. However, now that the governor, or excuse me, as soon as the governor signs it, the new electronic policy will allow us to have part virtual meetings. All right, so we have some flexibility. We also have the ability right now, if we choose, to have a full physical meeting. So as I say, as we sit right now, we have all possibilities open to us. And I think the sense of the APC was, let's get people back together. The rules that have been passed by the legislature, which are going to go into effect, pretty soon here, say that, first of all, whatever body is going to use this new blended procedure has to pass a policy. And the policy does not have to be complicated. It's probably no more than we're going to follow law. We're going to make sure that at least 50% of all the members, so for our membership, that would be what, 7. So we'd have to have at least 4 people physically present, which means when this legislation goes into effect, we will have at least the option under the state law to have 3 people virtual. Now, we, as Ryan said, as a body, have the ability to change that any way we want. We could say as a body, we're going to do all physical, 100%. Thank you very much, legislature, for giving us the option to go partially virtual, but we choose not to. So we're going to have some flexibility. If we're going to pass a policy that's going to allow us to do this blended, part physical, part virtual, the kinds of things that we would probably be thinking about would be whether or not we're going to, if we're going to have virtual attendees at all, whether or not we are going to make a limit so that any one member can only attend virtually a certain number of times in a year. That's all up to this body. The other kind of thing that you certainly want to think about and publish is whatever kind of CDC/social distancing /masking rules you want to impose. And so we have a pretty open field about what we can do. If we want to meet physically, we absolutely can do so. And so I think we're going to get a test case of it coming up here. Is it next week, Ryan, or week after?
Yeah, next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
Executive committee meeting, 4:30.
And so that's where we are. And the plan is still to go full physical, is my understanding, for next week. And that takes no special action at all. We just do it if we want to.
And the planning commission members, the president essentially put it to a vote, a show of hands, and determined very quickly that there was a majority of members that were agreeable to resuming in person. So that immediately left them with the option to do, if there's at least that majority that's willing to come in, then that obviously leaves a minority able to be virtual. One thing to consider, staff has been discussing this, is of course balloting for BZA members is a little more complicated than planning commission members. And so our suggestion is it may be a little screwy to have some people in person that are filling them out by hand, and then they hand them to the attorney, and then so there's some people at home that are emailing them in, and in order to get a decision, it may be a little more lengthy. And so one thing staff was proposing was that for the sake of efficiency and time management, it might make sense to do one or the other. Just stay virtual and we'll keep doing what we've been doing for the last year, or decide to resume in person. It's possible we might be able to do both and with regard to balloting, but I think it may kind of elongate the proceedings a bit, but I don't think it's impossible. So that's just another thing to consider. Where planning commission members have much simpler ballots, and it's usually much easier to account for those items. You guys all know what a BZA ballot involves, and it's a lot more to deal with. So I just offer that for your consideration.
But Ryan, it's my understanding though that we will be limited as to how long we will be able to meet virtually if we were to continue to meet virtually. As soon as the governor's emergency order is lifted, if that legislation is signed, we would have to then meet physically.
Right. Just as Eric said, the moment the governor puts pen to paper, we've lost the ability to go 100% virtual. And so, but that has not happened yet. So
let me clarify, Ryan. And it gets in the weeds pretty fast, folks, because we got this governor's order. As long as the governor's order is in effect and there's an emergency, then the state legislatures does not have at the moment. And there's some hot contest about what the governor's authority ought to be, et cetera, et cetera. But as long as there's an emergency order, we can continue to go full virtual. We just are given the option, as we have today, as we had yesterday, to go ahead and go full physical if we choose to, or even blended. Right now, we can do that.
So Eric, there's overlap essentially. Say the governor signs the order tomorrow, but yet, or I'm not the order, but signs the legislation, but yet the governor's order is still in effect, and that's so correct. It essentially overrules the new legislation.
Yeah, that is correct. And so they're going to have to deal with that in some fashion. And I hope to goodness that they time it so that they say it is now this, as opposed to, it might be this, it might be that. It would be certainly helpful. And I think they will do that. They know that it's an issue.
Me personally, I don't have an issue either way with virtual or physical. I mean, I've now have, next BZA meeting, next week I'll be 2 weeks after my second vaccine, so it's shot. But I don't know what other BZA members feel. I mean, if anybody is reluctant to show up physically, or if you would prefer, if you have any opinions at this time. I guess it's open for discussion.
Well, being at the Plan Commission meeting, they just asked who would be in favor of meeting in person. Raise your hand, and it's a pretty quick count. And that's how it was decided to meet in person. So I'm like you, Steve. I go either way, but I'm fine with meeting in person.
And I'm fine in Frank. I'm fine in meeting in person as well.
Okay.
I'm fine with meeting in person, whichever way they go, but I'm ready to come back.
The same for me. I'm more than happy to meet in person.
And Tom, do you have any?
Yeah, same. No, I'll meet in person.
So we have everyone but Michelle, and I believe at the area plan, Michelle was not. I don't think she was against it. I don't remember exactly, but what her vote was. But it sounds like we're in favor of going back in person. Are we ready to go back at our next meeting? That's assuming that everything goes well with the executive and the area plan meeting on May 26th. I'm assuming we don't have an issue with any type of publication or anything if we decide to go back.
No, there will be no issues with the publications.
So I'll take a motion if someone would like to formulate a motion to go back in person starting on May 26th, and I'll take that motion.
I move that we meet in person for the BZA meeting on May 26th, 2021.
I second.
I guess it should be starting May 26th. So
Starting May
forward.
26th. Okay, corrected. Thank you.
And we have a motion and a second. Is there any comment about whether or not we want to allow virtual members at this point and have 50%, or do we want to just go ahead and go in person? I think based on Ryan's comment that it'd be better to go one way or the other.
Eric, if the in-person meeting did not work for us, will we have an option to go back to virtual next month?
Yes, as long as the governor's order stays in effect, which again, we don't know, then
Right.
we are able to do anything that we want from full virtual to full physical. If the order expires, then we are going to fall under the category of you have a blend, as the state statute now says, with 50%, or you can go physical. So those are your options. But it's all dependent on what the governor does with his order.
Okay. I think there's value in testing next month's meeting as in person to see how we fare. We can decide at that point. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of meeting virtual or meeting in person starting on May 26, 2021? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. So next month we will be in person.
I have
I
nothing
guess
further on that particular item.
Will we need a mask?
David or other staff, are there any other administrative matters?
I think Ed had a question.
Yeah, do we need a mask? Would we want to wear a mask? Or is it necessary?
The county building no longer requires one
Okay.
to wear a mask, but it is advised.
Yeah,
Okay.
the posting around the building is no longer a requirement. It's now a recommendation.
Okay.
So it's essentially optional.
Optional. Okay.
We will wear masks. It's up to you.
Makes sense to me.
If
I'm
that
just
helps.
asking them. All right.
And I'm assuming we can
Eric,
spread out. We can spread out at the table too, so it's
Yes.
we won't necessarily
Eric,
be
maybe
as close. Go ahead, Jean.
All right, Eric, maybe you could clarify, but my understanding is that Tippecanoe County has walked that back now as well. So while they're not required in the like public areas in meetings, so specifically like all the courtrooms, et cetera, you're still required to wear masks in the courtrooms unless you're seated and socially distanced. So my understanding would be that all of our participants who chose to appear in person would still need to bring and wear a mask unless they're speaking or sitting more than 6 feet, the same way the courtrooms are working, right?
Well,
I thought that was county building wide.
I think not. I think first of all, we are going to socially distance. We know that, and that's a given. The courthouse, as you stated correctly, you walk into the courthouse, there's a sign that says you should wear a mask, but you don't have to. But as soon as you step into a courtroom, every single judge who has jurisdiction within that courtroom says, put your mask on. And so that is the judge's decision. And the commissioners don't meddle inside the courtroom any more than the judges meddle outside the courtroom in the rotunda. So it's back to the question of, first, what does a county building require? County building says you don't have to, but you should. And then our own body. And we could, as a body, say, hey, we're gonna all wear masks. That would be a perfectly suitable thing to do if you chose to do that. I think without even asking, we're going to be socially distanced. That's not something that anybody's going to question. I don't believe that's just an automatic, because that's still a CDC guideline, which, you know, it's good to follow the federal law.
Right. And we will set up the room so that you can be socially distanced in the meeting.
But back to the specific question, it is not required until this ABZA requires it for its own meetings. It is not required to wear a mask.
Okay, so it's up to us.
It is up to the body, correct.
That's helpful. Thank you very much, Eric.
Thanks.
Sure.
Does anyone have concerns about the members or the audience, wearing masks or not wearing masks? And should we leave it with the county policy, or do we want to go further and require masks?
And it may be. Go ahead.
We've not received any concern or conversation from other people about masks. So go ahead, Eric.
The only thing I was going to say is that we have a month. There are going to be other meetings that are going to be conducted. David, I was going to suggest that that is all the APC, ABZA, get together with the county attorney, commissioner or two, and at least talk through all of the issues, because to some extent it would make sense to have a set of ground rules for all county instrumentalities.
Yeah.
And that'll be up to the commissioners, not to me, but at least that would be one way to approach it. So I think before we meet at the end of May, some of those things will have congealed into some policies, is my guess.
That's a good point. I think the policy of recommended but not required is probably related more to the workaday employees here, more so than public meetings, public gatherings.
Probably right. So I think the county attorney ought to weigh in on that, quite frankly. And so we'll have some time to do that.
And I'm assuming then, if there is a decision made, that we would be notified of what that decision is.
Absolutely.
That sounds reasonable to me. I have no issue with that. Any other comments or corrections about, or correct comments about in-person meetings? Any other new or administrative matters?
That's it from staff. There have been no other public comment on social media. I have nothing further unless any of my colleagues do.
And do we know how our agenda for the next meeting looks like? Is it a busy one, or is it just a couple of cases?
It'll be a busy one. We have 4 cases.
Including the one that was continued?
That's correct.
Okay. That's not too bad. I will take the last motion.
I move to adjourn.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.
Looking forward to seeing everybody in person next month.